Exposed. Spine-chilling stories of haunted roommates. Discover the sinister secrets within. Jessica's heart raced as she crossed the threshold of her new home. The vintage house in Maplewood looming before her like a giant specter. The air felt thick, alive with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Surrounded by perfectly manicured lawns and neighbors with carefully rehearsed smiles, she thought she had hit the jackpot when she found an affordable room to share with a roommate she barely knew. Alex was charming, seemingly perfect, but the unsettling aura of the house whispered something different, a warning she couldn't quite understand. Some nights, when the shadows stretched across the walls and silence engulfed her like a shroud, she could almost hear her name drifting through the air, a ghostly echo that sent chills racing down her spine. It was as if the house had a pulse, a dark energy swirling around her, making her skin crawl. She brushed it off as stress, telling herself that it was just school weighing down on her. But the flickering lights that seemed to pulse with her nerves told a different story. They taunted her, dancing in the corners of her vision, always just out of reach of understanding. One night, while poring over textbooks, Jessica came across an article that made her blood run cold. It detailed a mysterious disappearance. A former tenant of this very house had gone missing 6 months prior. The details were haunting, and the whispers from the neighbors she hadn't paid attention to clawed their way back into her mind. They spoke of the house with a nervous tremor, of things that went bump in the night and eyes that watched from the shadows. Had Alex hidden this from her on purpose? Why would he do that? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days dragged on, each tinted with paranoia. Jessica felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her as she navigated through the mundane moments of life in Maplewood. Her laughter felt forced in the company of neighbors who avoided discussing her house, and her heart sank deeper into dread each time Alex flashed that charming smile, a mask that seemed to hide something sinister. Late one night, when silence thickened the air like fog, she stumbled upon a series of texts on Alex's phone. They spoke of betrayal and linked him to the cursed local legend of a missing tenant. The house was steeped in secrets, and she couldn't tell if he was a victim or a predator. Just as she was piecing it all together, the power went out, plunging her into stifling darkness. In that moment, a whisper curled around her ear, chilling her to the core. "Are you ready to uncover the truth, Jessica?" Terror seized her heart as she stumbled backward, eyes wide, only to catch a glimpse of Alex's wicked grin flickering in the soft glow of the dying lights. The walls around her seemed to pulse, as if the house itself was a living entity, feeding off her fear. She was trapped now, ensnared in a web of horror, and the truth lay just within reach. But at what cost? The air was suffocating, thickening with an electric apprehension as Jessica's racing heart matched the pounding of her feet. She stumbled backward, trying to get distance from Alex. The flickering lights painted him in eerie shadows, a figure caught between the familiar and the monstrous. His smile, once charming, now felt predatory. "Jessica," he said softly, almost too sweetly, "you shouldn't have seen that." His voice dripped with a calm that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The way he said her name sent a chill up her spine like a ghostly echo. It latched onto her psyche and wouldn't let go. Panic surged as she bolted toward the kitchen, her instincts kicking in. She fumbled for the landline, but of course, it was dead. The only option was to escape the house. She needed to get outside and breathe, gather her thoughts. But as she turned to charge through the doorway, the whispering shadows seemed to converge, pulling her back, forcing her to confront Alex. "Did you really think you could just ignore what is happening here?" He stepped closer, his figure emerging from the darkness like a bad dream. "This house isn't just old, it's alive." A shiver dug deep into her bones. Unable to think clearly, she darted towards the front door, but it swung shut with a deafening thud right before her. The windows rattled as if something unseen pressed against them, pressing her back into the shadows. "Run all you want," he taunted, eyes glimmering like polished obsidian. "Those whispers," he gestured theatrically, "they want you to know the truth. They've been waiting." Jessica's breath came out in ragged gasps. She felt trapped in a nightmare spun from the very walls of the house. Desperation clawed at her throat. "What do you mean? What truth? Remember the stories?" He leaned closer, words sharp as daggers. "The missing tenant? Everyone believes she just vanished. But she's here, Jess. She's part of this house now. Just like you will be with those final words." A low, guttural growl echoed from the attic, vibrating through the very floor beneath her feet. The noise reverberated, a mournful lament turning into hysterical laughter. It froze her blood. "No," Jessica whimpered, instinctively taking a step back. But there was nowhere to flee. The walls pulsed as if breathing, the house hungry for more secrets to consume. Suddenly, a door slammed somewhere in the depths of the house, an invitation masked as a warning. "Embrace it," Alex urged, his demeanor shifting from predator to something almost reverent. "You have the chance to discover what lies hidden in the dust and grief of this place. You'll learn its power. You'll become part of it." "No." Frantic, Jessica squinted into the darkness, searching for a light. A sign she wasn't alone in this horror. She grabbed a knife from the nearby counter, her hand trembling as she fixed her gaze on Alex. The shadows behind him twisted into forms, indistinct figures shifting in the half-light, watching. Jessica's heart raced in her chest, the weight of their stares heavy upon her. "Get away from me." Suddenly, a door creaked open, parts unknown. A chilling draft slid through the house, carrying the faint, bitter scent of decay. Something primal stirred within, urging her to venture forth. The growing darkness beckoned, whispering promises of secrets and horrors. What choice did she have? Running seemed futile. The house knew her name. What lay ahead? Would she find the missing tenant? Or worse, would she become a shadow herself? As she stood poised on the threshold of the attic, an unholy curiosity tugged at her heart. Forward or flee? The dying light caught a glimmer in her eyes as she stepped over the threshold, her fate entwined with the house's dark past. What awaited her in the suffocating dimness above? The answers loomed like a storm, shrouded in dread. Jessica took a breath and moved deeper into the darkness, knowing that whatever emerged on the other side, nothing would ever be the same. The attic door creaked ominously as Jessica pushed it open, the heavy scent of dust and mildew pouring out like a thick fog. The darkness swallowed her whole, a tangible force that felt alive, breathing over her skin. She clutched the knife tighter, every instinct screaming that she was not welcome here. With shaky steps, she moved deeper into the gloom, the floorboards groaning beneath her weight. What lay within the shadows? Her heart thundered, echoing in the silence. A sudden draft sent a shiver down her spine, carrying whispered remnants of laughter, echoes of sorrow. It was a cacophony of ghosts, waiting for her to uncover their secrets. The beam from her phone's flashlight cut through the dark. Dust motes danced in the light, suspended in time. Here, in the attic, it felt as if the walls themselves were alive, watching and waiting. Old furniture loomed like sentinels, battered by time but still standing, holding their unspoken stories close. In one corner, under a tattered sheet, lay an antique mirror, its surface cracked and cloudy. Jessica approached cautiously. Something about it pulled at her, the allure of old tales woven through its frame. She reached out, fingers brushing the cold glass. An image flickered back at her, her own face distorted as she peered into the abyss. But it wasn't just her reflection. Behind her, shadows shifted, coiling like smoke. "Turn around," Jessica, a voice called, soft as silk but laced with malice. Jessica's heart seized. She swung around, knife poised, adrenaline surging through her veins. Alex stood inches away, an apparition shimmering in the half-dark. But he looked different. His eyes glinted with dark amusement, and for a moment, she saw something else behind those familiar features, a hunger, a longing that sent visceral terror coursing through her. "Your fate is intertwined with this place," he said, voice almost hypnotic. "You have to see." "No!" she screamed, stepping back, but an unseen force pushed her forward, her feet dragging her unwillingly toward the mirror. "Get away from me," he smiled, a twisted, knowing smile. "You can't escape the truth. You're already in it." The air thickened, swirling around her as her mind raced. How could Alex be so different? The warmth and familiarity were eclipsed by a chilling presence, something ancient and wicked. Full of dread, she looked back to the mirror. It rippled like water, a dark well of memories, promising to unveil the unknown. Suddenly, the shadows swelled, reaching out from the corners like ravenous tendrils. They pulled at her clothes, gripping her tightly, as if warning no, begging her to stay away from the mirror. Laughter erupted again, echoing, twisted, cruel, mocking her every move. Jessica felt panic seep into her bones. "No!" she shouted, breaking free for just a moment. But the shadows surged again, thickening their hold. They whispered her name, sweet as poison, pulling her closer to the mirror's edge. Each word felt like the grasp of cold hands, wrapping around her throat. In a desperate act, she slashed at the air with the knife. The blade bit into one of the forms. A sudden flare of pain, and the laughter turned to horrified cries. The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned. "Run!" A voice cried, an echo of the missing tenant. A faint glimmer of hope surged within her. But the shadows quickly rallied, pushing her toward the mirror once more. With barely a moment to think, she lunged backward, stumbling away from the mirror. Everything felt dreamlike, the world blurring at the edges. She needed to escape, to understand what was happening, to uncover the truth Alex had spoken of, even if it meant facing the darkness head-on. But just as she reached the door, a loud crash reverberated through the attic. A wooden crate had toppled over, spilling out forgotten relics. Among them, a journal fell open, pages fluttering like frantic birds. "Read me," the wind seemed to whisper as the attic shook with energy. The shadows pressed closer, urging her to join their twisted dance. Would she dare to open the journal? What truths lay within those ink-stained pages? Would it lead her to freedom or deeper into the abyss? The terrifying choice loomed, the house seeming to pulse with anticipation. What would she uncover when surrounded by the hungry shadows? Would she step closer to the dark past or fight to reclaim her own light? Jessica's hands trembled as she hovered over the journal. A part of her screamed to flee, to escape the pull of this haunted place. But another part, a darker, bolder part, felt an irresistible curiosity for the secrets it held. The shadows swirled, a mass of black wisps that flickered in and out of sight. They whispered urgently, voices overlapping, creating a dissonance that filled her head. "Open it, find out, join us." Each phrase was layered with dread, like shadows clinging to her skin. She swallowed hard. With a deep breath, Jessica grasped the journal's spine and pulled it toward her. The pages felt cool and brittle, as if they hadn't been disturbed in decades. She flipped it open, and the smell of aged paper and ink rushed out, an ancient aroma that tugged at her instincts. Lines of spidery handwriting filled the pages. An old name caught her eye, Margaret. The entry spoke of odd occurrences, whispers in the night, shadows that crept along the walls, and a growing sense of despair that seeped into Margaret's life. Each word felt heavy, each sentence laced with a sense of looming dread. "Something watches in the dark," one entry declared. "I fear it knows me, and desires my soul." Creaks echoed in the attic again, but she couldn't tear her gaze away. Jessica flipped to the next page, and the ink bled into something darker. A sketch appeared. A wraith-like figure, elongated limbs stretching out like branches, reaching toward Margaret, toward each soul burdened with despair. "Help me!" The voice of the journal seemed to resonate in her mind. "Who is asking for help?" she whispered, looking around. The shadows shuddered, as if reacting to her words. They pulsed closer, eager, desperate. They seemed to sense her determination and swelled in excitement and fury. The attic felt smaller, walls closing in, pressing her against the rough floor. A cold sweat broke out along her brow. What had she unleashed? Despair clawed at her heart, weaving its way through her thoughts. Could this relentless dark truly know her? With trembling fingers, she turned the pages faster, seeking answers, seeking a way to eradicate this evil. The more she read, the more hopeless the entries became. Descriptions of Margaret's final descent into madness echoed in her ears, a battle lost before it had even begun. The mirror, she muttered to herself, feeling a chill wash over her. The entry concluded with Margaret's frantic warning, "Don't look into the mirror after dusk." Jessica felt the urge to glance back at it, even though she had first-hand experience of its dark allure. It beckoned her still, a siren drawing her in deeper. But would looking again pull her closer to the darkness that consumed Margaret? Suddenly, a fierce wind whooshed through the attic, scattering the pages around her like dead leaves. The shadows twisted, shrieking in anger and desperation. They clawed at her ice-cold fingers, wrapping around her ankles, dragging her down, urging her toward the mirror, toward their eternal grasp. "No!" she yelled, fighting against the unseen hold. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering on the floor. She stumbled back, heart racing, eyes wide. "Help me!" The voice came again, louder now. It wasn't buried in the pages anymore, it was a real plea, a terrifying echo that filled her with terror. Jessica jolted upright, still gripping the journal. "What do you want from me?" she screamed, her voice rising above the chaos. "Join us," they hissed, the shadows swirling as they danced and pulsed around the edges of her vision. She was at a crossroads, fight or flight. The mirror and its infinite darkness glimmered, whispering her name, pulling her closer. She knew now she could either embrace the secrets hiding within or find a way to destroy them. With a determined gasp, she clutched the journal tight against her chest. The pressure around her escalated. The shadows surged, ravenous, desperate. Fear ignited in her veins as she realized the price of knowledge could be her very soul. As she prepared to fight, a cold breeze slid through the rafters, sending a chilling word through the attic. Truth, what truth lay ahead? Could she uncover Margaret's fate and free herself from these malevolent forces? Or was she destined to join the darkness that wanted to claim her? As the shadows loomed closer, Jessica's mind raced for a plan. The journal's pages fluttered again, as if urging her to make a choice, but would she dare? A deafening silence descended, the kind that presses in on you, suffocating all hope. Jessica's heart hammered in her chest, drowning out the whispers, even as they slithered around her. She had to make a choice. The shadows, now more defined, smirked and twisted, their breath cold against her skin, each exhalation like knives biting into her. "Fight," she whispered to herself, even as doubt wormed its way into her thoughts. With a frantic sweep of the journal, she scanned for any clue, anything that could guide her, give her power against the tide of darkness threatening to engulf her. The ink seemed to shimmer, almost alive, as another entry caught her eye. It spoke of the reflection of truth. Instantly, she felt drawn to it, as if Margaret herself was attempting to convey a desperate message from beyond. "Find the truth," she murmured, clenching her jaw. But was the truth worth finding? Did it lead to salvation or torment? The wind howled again, almost mocking her indecision, swirling the pages, pulling her attention back to the mirror. "Face it." The shadows beckoned, their voices slipping through the air like smoke. They grew impatient, their tendrils coiling and unfurling, itching for her surrender. She had to take control. Desperation fueled her resolve. Jessica took a deep breath, her instincts tingling. The air turned heavier. Every inch felt like it was being weighed down by unseen eyes. "Margaret," Jessica called, grasping the journal like a lifeline. "I want to help you. I want to know the truth." The shadows shrieked, retreating a fraction before surging back with renewed fervor. The mirror gleamed, a black surface that drew her closer, promising her clarity even amidst the chaos. "Help me." The plea slipped through the darkness, almost a whistle, reaching for her soul. Jessica agonized, knowing that the mirror was a trap, a gateway for the dark energies at play. But what was she willing to lose? The whispers tugged at her thoughts, Look into the mirror, see what you've been hiding from. Her feet moved forward, the shadows swirling faster, almost wrapping around her legs as she approached the mirror. Every logical part of her screamed to turn away, but another instinct told her to confront what lay within. With trembling hands, she lifted the journal, positioning it against the mirror's surface, eyes darting, heart racing. The coldness radiated, and for a moment, she believed she could hear Margaret's calm voice again, beckoning her to see. Then it happened. The mirror fogged as shadowy tendrils reached out, swirling around her, pushing against her skin, reaching into her thoughts. Images flashed before her eyes, faint glimpses of a life collapsing. Laughter turning to despair, joy morphing into fear. Desperation seized her. "No, I won't let you take me," Jessica screamed, pulling the journal tighter to her chest, like it could shield her from the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, Margaret's face appeared in the mirror, gaunt and filled with sorrow, but her eyes burned with an intensity that conveyed fear and warning. Don't trust it," she gasped, just as shadows ripped through the reflection, twisting Margaret's form into an agonizing scream. Jessica stumbled back, gasping, realizing her reflection was shifting too, becoming distorted, the shadows pulling and stretching her features, mimicking Margaret's suffering. "No," she shouted, backing away, feeling the attic's walls closing in. But with every desperate attempt to escape, she felt the journal slither from her grip, landing at the mirror's edge, as if it too wished to remain in the dark. The shadows surged at her, a rushing tide. Jessica's mind whirled. Was this her destiny, to linger in the darkness, lost like Margaret? As the shadows lunged, she flung herself backward, crashing into a pile of forgotten boxes. The attic erupted in chaos, the wind howled. The shadows swelled and cavorted, hungry for her fear. And then, amidst the chaos, a fragment of the journal floated up from the ground, its pages flipping through sheer will. There, highlighted, a sentence leaped into. "Focus. Only the brave will see the truth." What did that mean? Could she be brave enough to confront what must be faced? The shadows mourned, clamoring for her decision. Would Jessica uncover the true horrors that lay within or be consumed by the darkness? Time was running out. The choice was looming, but which option would lead to salvation? And somewhere deep within the shadows, a deeper voice whispered, "Are you ready?" Panic coursed through Jessica as she lay amongst the wreckage of the attic boxes, her heart racing like a trapped animal. Shadows writhed, thick and malevolent, coiling around her limbs, urging her to give in, to surrender to the dark whispers curling in her ears. "Give in!" they hissed, their cold breath wrapping around her throat like a noose. "Stay away!" she yelled, scrambling to her feet, partially blinded as the darkness clung to her skin, the oppressive weight threatening to pin her down. The journal lay abandoned at the mirror's edge, its pages turning relentlessly like the ticking of a clock, each flip echoing the footsteps of time running out. "Margaret!" Jessica screamed, her voice cracking with a mix of fear and hope. She flung herself toward the journal, feeling its familiarity as a tether to the world that felt so unsettlingly distant. As she snatched it up, the mirror pulsed with energy, and the reflection transformed. It warped into a swirling vortex, chaotic and hypnotic. Figures began to emerge, faces contorted in agony, their eyes wide with terror. Who were they? Desperate remnants calling for help, trapped within the grip of the sinister force that had ensnared so many before her. Jessica's mind raced. "This can't be real," she muttered, shaking her head, her breath hitching as another vision unfolded before her. A young girl, no older than 10, reached out from the depths, her wide eyes glimmering with unshed tears. "Help me," she cried, voice small yet piercing. Jessica froze. "What happened to you?" she whispered, drawn to the childish plea, horrified yet helpless. The girl's silhouette flickered, the shadows around her swirling with a jealous rage. "Brave, you must be brave," the child repeated, her image fading, replaced by a shrill laugh that echoed in the hollow attic. The laughter morphed into a cacophony, a chorus of lost souls, each one begging for release. Doubt seized Jessica's heart. Her unease grew like a vine, curling around her thoughts. Why was it her responsibility to help them? The shadows tugged her back, and the mirror pulsed ominously, demanding her attention, pulling her closer into its depths. Face the truth. The shadows hissed in tandem, their voices merging into a sinister symphony. Each word slithered into Jessica's mind, chilling her to the bone. She needed clarity. She needed the strength she doubted she had. The air crackled with tension. Only the brave echoed in her ears, battering against her skull like an urgent warning. What lay beyond the mirror? Was it the freedom for those trapped, or simply another layer of torment? Jessica clenched her jaw, heart pounding with the fight igniting in her chest. She couldn't leave them behind. "I'll help you," she cried, her voice ringing with newfound resolve. She stepped forward, merging the journal against the mirror's surface. At that moment, the world around her split open like a wound. The shadows unleashed enormous waves, each one crashing into her, low growls reverberating within her bones. The pressure built, piercing and suffocating, as the faces of despair twisted, eager to slip into her, to share their torment. "No!" she screamed, pushing against the wall of darkness closing in. But just as the void threatened to envelop her completely, Jessica focused on the journal, on its promise of truth. She had to be brave. In a final act of defiance, she screamed, "Show me!" The mirror convulsed violently, shattering into fragmented splinters of glass that reflected 1,000 versions of her terror. Each shard revealed a different truth, each more horrifying than the last. And in that surreal moment, she glimpsed something unimaginable. A secret sacred and terrifying, lying at the heart of the darkness. A greater horror, lurking just beyond comprehension. As she caught her breath, dread outweighed confusion. What had she awakened? And as the shadows shrieked in agonized fury around her, a thought pierced through the chaos. "Can you handle the truth, Jessica?" With the journal clutched tightly, she braced herself. The real nightmare was just beginning. The shadows writhed around her like serpents, relentless in their pursuit. Jessica gasped, her breath a thin whisper, swirling into the thick darkness. The journal pulsated in her grip, its power radiating warmth that battled against the chill that seeped into her bones. "What do you want from me?" she choked out, her voice trembling as she surveyed the chaos unfolding around her. The mirror's shards glinted maliciously, and the faces within twisted with rage. They howled like a pack of wolves, clawing at the edges of their glass prison. "You must choose," they cried, their voices a harrowing echo. "Join us or suffer alone." The child's voice returned, haunting and desperate, drowning out the cacophony. "Brave you must be brave," the words pounded in her mind, igniting her determination. Maybe bravery meant facing the truth of herself, the part of her that she had buried deeper than the darkness around her. Jessica stumbled back, heart racing, mind struggling to comprehend. She was not just a bystander in this nightmare. She was part of it. The thought paralyzed her, but something inside her pushed forward. "I'm not afraid," she shouted into the swirling void, the words reverberating with a strength she didn't know she possessed. With each heartbeat, the shadows drew closer, coiling around her limbs like heavy shackles. She fought against them, fueled by the fire of her resolve. She raised the journal like a shield, its pages fluttering wildly. "Show me what I need to see," she screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos. The mirror responded violently, a storm of light and shadow. The environment shifted, and suddenly she was no longer in the attic. She stood on a cliff overlooking a vast, dark abyss. The ground beneath her trembled, and the air was thick with despair. Beneath her feet, whispers ignited, swirling around her like whispers of lost souls seeking redemption. "Why are you here?" A familiar voice echoed from the depths. Jessica turned sharply, eyes widening as Margaret stepped from the shadows, her face pale and gaunt, eyes deep wells of sorrow. "You shouldn't have come, Jessica. This is not your fight." "Margaret!" Jessica cried, her heart leaping with a mix of relief and dread. "I have to help them. I can't just let them suffer. You don't understand." Margaret warned, her expression twisting in anguish. To uncover the truth, you must first confront your own. With these words, the abyss raged, swallowing the ground beneath Margaret, her figure fading into the darkness like a flickering candle. "Margaret, wait!" Jessica shouted, reaching out. Panic clawed at her throat, but before she could take a step, shadows surged around her, pulling her into the depths. The sounds of tortured cries filled the air, drowning her pleas. Then everything stopped. Silence enveloped her like a heavy blanket, and the once raging darkness faded to an unsettling stillness. Jessica was alone. She crouched on the ground, grasping the journal tightly. Inside, the story had changed. Pages were filled with words she had never written, describing fears she didn't know she harbored. Images flared to life, memories lost to time. Faces of people she had forgotten and moments she had suppressed surged forward like tidal waves, drowning her sanity. "What is this?" she gasped, flipping through the pages. The truth lay before her, raw and unfiltered, each word a stab to her heart. And then she saw it, the finality of a choice looming on the horizon. Would she confront her deadened past and wrest control from the shadows? Or would she succumb to the darkness, merging her fate with the lost souls forever? "Brave, you must be brave," the echoes taunted again, louder this time, spilling into her mind and filling her lungs. Jessica's hands trembled as she flipped to the last page, which remained blank, awaiting her answer. What would she write in the face of such horror? Time raced against her as dread clawed deeper. Will you face what you truly are? The silence seemed to whisper, teasing. The darkness rippled, anticipating her decision. And with bated breath, she realized her truth might be just as terrifying as what lived in the shadows. The silence clung to Jessica, heavy and oppressive. Her heart pounded like a war drum, the rhythm echoing in her ears as the shadows pulsed with growing impatience. The journal became a weight in her hands, a daunting artifact holding her fate and fears. What could she write? Where could she begin? Each flick of a page revealed more horrors. Pasts she thought long buried clawed their way back, dragging memories she had locked away in the recesses of her mind. She could see her childhood bedroom, the peeling wallpaper, echoes of laughter now tainted with the bitterness of betrayal. Her breath quickened. The shadows hissed like a jealous lover, urging her to choose. "Brave, you must be brave." The voice rolled over her like a tide, wrenching her from her thoughts. The orgasm of chaos around her began again, swirling like a tempest. Faces began to merge in the darkness, their eyes hollow, mouths stretching into soundless screams. They seemed to reach out, grasping for something just beyond their grasp. They wanted her. Their desperation sparked an instinctual fear deep within Jessica. With each page turned, images morphed into vivid horror. A deadly accident she witnessed as a child replayed itself. A warm body turned cold under her trembling hands. The weight of guilt washed over her like a sinking stone. She could feel it all again, the panic, the helplessness. The journal vibrated, its pages crackling under the invisible energy swirling through the air. "Face it," it commanded, urging her to peel back the layers of her torment. With a sudden surge of determination, she pressed the journal to her heart. "I have to face the truth. I have to face." Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled violently, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The whispers intensified into a deafening roar, rising around her like a violent wind. She was losing her grip on everything, veering toward the edge where the shadows beckoned, promising to take her in, to absorb her into their never-ending torment. Desperation clawed at her throat. One last moment of resolve surged through her. "I choose to confront you," Jessica screamed into the tempest, hoping that her voice would slice through the suffocating dark. She flipped to the empty final page again, the final blank space a shining beacon amidst the chaos. Fingers trembling, she hesitated, feeling as if the very act of writing meant laying bare her soul. The shadows hissed, and the faces in the mirror screamed in fury. But in the depths of her heart, a flicker of defiance ignited. "I will not let you win," she declared, and with that, she plunged her pen onto the paper, the ink spilling out like a flood. She wrote of her guilt, her fears, her forgotten sins. Each word acted as a dagger against the shadows, and with every stroke, she felt the darkness lessen, a weight lifting from her soul. But just as she penned the final line, everything ground to a halt. The shadows shuddered, and the air froze. The mirror shattered, pieces flying outward like jagged stars bursting in a night sky. No! A thunderous voice echoed, reverberating through the abyss as it closed in around her. You think you can escape? Jessica felt the ground beneath her start to give way, a chasm opening wide around her as the shadows shrieked, raw and furious. What have you done? In that moment, she realized her fight was far from over. The words she had written glowed, lighting her path but igniting the wrath that now converged upon her. Suddenly, a radiant figure emerged from the chaos, a child, familiar and luminous. You have chosen, it whispered, but that choice has awakened something far more sinister. With every ounce of her being, Jessica grasped for the childish hand, as the abyss filled with dark laughter and wrath surged around them. What will they unleash? She wondered, terror curdling her insides as they spiraled into the void, leaving everything behind. And just like that, the shadows lunged, ready to pull them into their nightmares once more. The darkness closed in tightly around Jessica and the radiant child, swirling them deeper into the unknown. The air turned icy, and every breath felt like inhaling crushed glass. She could hear the echo of laughter reverberating, mocking her in the depths of the void. Don't let go, she whispered, gripping the child's small hand tightly. The luminescent figure seemed to pulse with a strange energy, warmth radiating from it like a torch in the night. Stay close, the child urged, eyes wide with an innocent terror that belied the horror surrounding them. A beam of light cascaded from the child, cutting through the inky blackness, illuminating hundreds of twisted faces and skeletal forms watching from the edges of the shadows. Their eyes glinted with malice, eager to witness Jessica's torment. Why are they here? She gasped, tension strumming in her chest like drawn wire. One face pushed forward, a featureless mask cloaked in wisps of shadow, tearing through the solid air, hungry and relentless. What do you want from me? You'll find out, dear Jessica. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of whispers slithering around her. Promise chaos, a slow, seductive unraveling. You've opened the door. You can't close it now. The child squeezed her hand. We have to run. They dashed downward, the light flickering with urgency, breathing life into the darkness for just a moment longer. But with each step, the shadows leaped in closer, a torrential wave threatening to engulf them entirely. Jessica's heart raced as they barreled through the abyss, memories flaring like shooting stars. Fragments of her past resurfacing, swirling chaotic and vivid, igniting fears she thought were put to rest. An out-of-control car careening toward her with a deafening screech. The twisting body of a loved one, forever silenced. No, not now, she cried. The very ground beneath seemed alive, clawing at her feet, pulling her back toward the nightmares she had dared to confront. The shadows hissed louder, filling her mind with chaos, until one voice rose above the rest, a chilling, recognizable tone that made her blood run cold. Please, help me. It was her old friend's voice, a cry she had never been able to forget. But it was just a mask. She could feel it. The child looked up, fear spilling from their eyes. It's a trick. Don't listen. They kept moving, but the hand that once felt reassuring became heavier, almost dragging her back to the shadows. Jessica! The voice cried out again, closer this time. It twisted her gut, the agony of guilt intertwining with dread. You left me to die. No, she shouted, forcing her eyes shut. I want to let you in. But the memory clawed at her mind. The shadows pulsed, energy ebbing and flowing, intoxicated by her turmoil. She opened her eyes just as the ground trembled violently. The dark laughter thickened, a monstrous growl echoing in tandem with the pounding in her chest. The child remained steadfast, pulling her through the chaotic maelstrom. But the faces began to break through, their screams blending into a terrifying symphony. Then, just as they seemed to emerge from the depths, the light from the child dimmed. Shadows stretched toward them, reaching with long fingers, eager to reclaim their prey. In a burst of instinct, Jessica yanked her hand free, baring her teeth at the darkness. "You can't have us." The shadows recoiled as if burned by her defiance, shifting and swirling in a frenzy. But as she stood firm, heart racing, a terrible realization washed over her. The darkness was changing. A new, darker presence coalesced, a figure rising among the chaos, radiating pure malice. "It's time, Jessica, time to embrace the shadows," it hissed, its form flickering like a broken light, beckoning her forward with a twisted smile. Jessica froze, caught in the glare of death's embrace. Was it too late to escape? What did it want from her? The ground quaked beneath her once more, the shadows whispering her name. A new scream echoed through the void, a haunting wail that made her blood run cold. Is this the end? She trembled as the shadow tightened its grip around her heart. And below, the darkness began to form a storm, promising a new nightmare to come. As the chilling whispers closed in, a deep strength ignited within Jessica. No longer would she allow these shadows to dictate her fate. Steeling her resolve, she squared her shoulders and glared into the abyss. "I am not afraid of you," she yelled, her voice rising above the cacophony. The darkness paused, as if surprised by her defiance. The figure looming before her flickered, its twisted smile turning into a snarl. "You think you can confront the darkness without consequence?" It hissed, its form coiling like smoke. "I don't think," she shot back, clutching the journal tightly, its warm energy coursing through her. "I know I can face the truth." The wind howled, disrupting the shadows, as her words resonated through the void. A beam of light erupted from the journal, radiating outwards. The child beside her fluttered, a gleam of hope reflected in their wide eyes. "Stand strong," they urged, gathering the radiant energy around them like a shield. With a surge of courage, Jessica closed her eyes, focusing on every ache from her past, the guilt, the pain, every mistake that those shadows fed upon, and began to write fiercely in the journal. She penned every hurt, every moment of weakness with the fervor of a woman reborn. The darkness writhed, many voices rising, howling in anguish as the ink spilled forth. "Stop! You cannot!" they cried, now losing their grasp on her, retreating from the light cascading around her. "How can you be brave if you don't confront your fears?" Jessica yelled back, pouring more of herself into the pages, words streaming out quicker than her thoughts. Finally, she glimpsed the truth in her memory that had eluded her, the resilience that lived within, the understanding that she could choose to forgive herself, to forgive those lost in her past. Face it, face it. The shadows churned, their screams growing louder, tremors shaking the void around her. But she pressed on, revealing the truth she had buried deep within. "I faced pain," she wrote, "and I choose to rise." With each word, she felt a strength surging through her, illuminating the darkness that had once caged her fears. The shadows convulsed, as though shrieking in denial. They lunged, grasping at her heart, but the light was blinding. "No," she yelled. "You don't control me." And with one final, powerful stroke, she wrote down a resolve that caged her past while releasing her ownership of it. The energy erupted, creating a barrier that pushed against the shadows, splintering the chill that sought to engulf her. Light erupted in dazzling waves, refracting off the broken pieces of the mirror, illuminating every corner of the abyss. The child, glowing ever brighter, intertwined their fingers with Jessica's. "You have done it. You have chosen to rewrite your story." They cheered, the warmth wrapping around her like a blanket against the frigid air. Shadows began to retreat, wailing in desperation as they dissipated into nothingness. The swirling darkness lost its hold, the faces faded, their screams echoing softly before silence filled the void. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to stabilize, expanding outward like blooming flowers in spring, soft light breaking through from above. Jessica leaned heavily against the child as the shadows disintegrated, remnants of pain swirling into the universe like whispers lost in time. "Thank you," she said tearfully, her heart swelling with a profound sense of relief. I couldn't have done it without you. The child smiled, their form shimmering. You did it, Jessica. The truth set you free. Remember, the shadows can never take what you've embraced within yourself. And as they stood together, amidst what felt like both an end and a new beginning, the walls of the attic faded away into a horizon filled with sunlit pastures, the clutter of the haunted house vanishing like a fading dream. The air was fresh, sunlight poured down like liquid gold, a world ripe with possibility ahead. Jessica looked around, finally at peace. She had confronted her fears, uncovered the buried truths, and chosen to take back her life. She would carry that bravery forward, one step at a time, allowing her journey unfolding beyond the shadows. With one last glance at the glimmering horizon, she knew she was ready to begin anew. But before she stepped forward, she felt a quickening pulse in her heart. The memories of those lost could not vanish entirely. They would forever be a part of her story, and she promised to honor that truth, to help others brave their own darkness when the time came. And as the sun set low, casting soft oranges and pinks against the open sky, Jessica took a step forward, embracing both her past and her newfound freedom, the potential shining brightly ahead. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will send shivers down your spine. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. I want to know your thoughts, so flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this insane ending. And please, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us make sure true fans stick together, and every click and comment makes a difference.